welcome back to the buy and sell. It has been a while, but we are back and we are ready to talk buys and sells. This is the week 12 edition of the buy and sell. How you doing, everybody? It is Braxton from Angle. And yeah, like I said, welcome back. It's been a minute. And let's just jump right into it. So my top buy for this week is going to be Peyton Watson. He is currently 14% owned on Yahoo. Over the last 2 weeks, he ranks 118th on 9 category. And he's really just been quite the beast. And I'm really surprised, with how good he's been. So, he's averaging 9.6 points per game, 4 boards, almost 2 assists. But here's the cool part, 1 steal and 2 blocks per game out of the guard position. So he's got guard and forward eligibility on most platforms. Getting the blocks out of somebody in that guard spot is huge for teams that are either low on blocks or maybe teams that are, not necessarily centered around guard stats, right? Where you need guards that can do things that bigs can do. He fits perfectly. I mentioned I'm really impressed with him. He's been doing this with Jamal Murray in the lineup. Just tonight, Aaron Gordon came back. He was pretty limited. He played about 18 minutes, but it seems like this is going to be eating into Michael Porter Jr.'s minutes a little bit as well. He's been playing upwards of 30, slightly above 30 minutes, I should say, over the last few games. I don't think he kind of settles in there. I think he kind of settles in maybe in a 27, 28 minute per role, minute per game role moving forward, especially if he keeps this level of play up. It is hurting Christian Brown a little bit as well. But, Peyton Watson, the projection for him was never to be this huge scorer. The 10 points per game is really nice. And if he can stay up around 8, accompanied with the blocks, I know he isn't making a lot of threes, just 0.6 over the last 2 weeks, but that accompanied with the blocks should make him more than rosterable, especially at 118 over the last 2 weeks. So, and after the game tonight, I think he's going to be picked up in a lot more leagues, just because, it seemed like, at least in my opinion, everybody was kind of waiting to see how it was going to work out with Aaron Gordon back in the lineup. Yes, he was limited, and I don't think Peyton Watson is going to be playing 32, 33 minutes every single night, but we know how desperate Denver is for quality rotation players. It's quite the drop off after a certain point, right? So, they run a very tight rotation. And to me, there's no reason why Peyton Watson can't stay up in the high 20s moving forward. So I really like him both in redraft and in dynasty now and moving forward. So my number 2 is going to be Max Christie. Max Christie has been, just like Peyton Watson, has been really awesome over the last couple of weeks. I know the Lakers are dealing with a lot of postponements right now. He's only 16% owned. He's getting dropped in a bunch of leagues that he was owned in. But over the last 2 weeks, he ranks 84th in 9 category rankings. He was inserted into the starting lineup 13 games ago, and he has been so good since then. The Lakers have been good as well, and I don't see any reason why he would get pulled out of the starting lineup. I mentioned those postponed games. Those potentially could come into play later in the season. So I tweeted about this. If they have to create like back-to-backs or something, or they have to kind of squeeze those in, because especially if it turns out to be like 3 or 4 games that get postponed total, it's possible those come into play during the fantasy playoffs, right? I'm not saying that for sure they're going to get an extra game or anything like that, but if it does come into like a 4 games in 7 days, or just a lot of games in a short time frame, and they need to rest LeBron or rest AD for one of them or something, he is somebody that is going to benefit. Just because you'll see a lot of you'll see additional shots on nights like that. He's somebody that'll play as long as he's healthy. He's not a rest candidate or anything like that. And yeah, he's just been nailing all of his shots. He has been shooting 53% from the field over the last 2 weeks. I don't think that's necessarily sustainable, but it's definitely something you want to ride the hot hand while he's hot. 2 threes per game, almost 14 points, and about a steal with only 1 turnover per game. I mean, you really know what you're getting from him, and I could easily. There's a ton of players who have higher roster percentages than him that I would easily have Christie over, especially with the I don't know, something about the postponed games and seeing where those fall really intrigues me. Especially if you're not necessarily fighting for seeding, or you feel like you're good in terms of holding Christie for a couple games. Let's see if they have to postpone a couple more. I like grabbing. I like the idea of grabbing Christie after somebody drops them. And in Dynasty, he is somebody I would look to acquire as well. It seems like he's finally playing into that contract they gave him. Early in the season, it was kind of like, why did they give him that contract if they weren't going to play him? But he's kind of turning it around, and really excited to see what he can do moving forward. So number three is going to be Isaiah Collier. He's only 5% owned. This is a little bit of a deeper cut. He has been kind of trending up recently. Over the last 2 weeks, he's averaging almost 24 minutes per game. But the hard part is that he's not really doing anything besides getting assists. 6.4 over the last 2 weeks. The field goal is bad. It's only at 37%. He's not hitting any threes. He's not scoring. The boards, I mean, 3.6, that's not really, any it's negligible, right? And then point 0.9 is steals is not something not ideal from the guard spot. I should say as well. He's not helping you with steals very much. Jordan Clarkson has a torn plantar fascia. It seems like he's going to be done. I don't know if for the season. They haven't necessarily ruled him out for the season, but I don't see any reason why they would rush him back from an injury like that. It tends to be a very painful injury. The Jazz are going nowhere. They have a terrible record. They have a lot of incentive to play Isaiah Collier to see what they have out of him. But the assists, those are elite assists. It's really tough to find something like that on the wire. He's pretty much a worse version of Tyus Jones right now, where the majority of that value is coming from assists. 5% owned is too low. So if your build needs assists, and also he might be decent in points league, especially because he's racking up those assists as well as some boards. But if you're in a league where you need assists, Isaiah Collier is somebody that I would grab and maybe hold for another week or two to see if he kind of gets some additional stats to supplement that. But even with just the with it being so high at 6.4, he's almost pretty rosterable in I wouldn't say 10-team leagues yet, but definitely in 12-team leagues, just with it being so high. So and Dynasty owners, I would feel pretty good about how he's looked so far. I'd like to see him, hit maybe three once per game and shoot a little bit better from the field. But other than that, he hasn't looked terrible. He looks like he belongs on the NBA floor. So I'd be pretty excited about that. And rounding out the buys, this is kind of an honorable mention, just somebody to keep your eye on, not necessarily somebody I'm looking to acquire right now in redrafts. Could be a dynasty buy, but it's going to be Oso Ighodaro. He's only 1% owned on Yahoo. That is interesting to me, especially with Nurkic looking like he's going to be glued to the bench. That leaves Oso. The only person Oso has to beat out is Mason Plumlee, who is fine. He's not the most exciting. If Oso decides he wants to start using that elite three-point shooting form, I don't know if you guys have seen the videos of him shooting, but if he wants to start taking some threes, that could be pretty interesting. Over the last 2 weeks, not really much to be excited about, though. 18 minutes per game, 4.5 points, 3 boards, 1 for 4 assists, and a block. Like I said, not necessarily I'm looking to acquire in redrafts right now, but really keep your eye on him. Could be rosterable in 16-team leagues, especially if you need a center. I can imagine how barren the wire is for center eligible players in 16 and above. So could be somebody you want to roster there. Definitely fully a stash right now in both redraft and dynasty though. Dynasty owners, like I said, he's only got to beat out Mason Plumlee. And that doesn't seem like an insurmountable task. Now, it remains to be seen if the Suns make a trade using Nurkic's contract. I think it's possible maybe they trade for somebody, trade him to Washington for somebody like JV with some additional moving parts there. That would be bad for Oso, obviously, but until that remains to be seen, until that happens, I should say, you have to assume that it's going to be Oso and Mason Plumlee playing the five moving forward. So yeah, definitely keep your eye on him. And then in the sell this week, it is going to be Terry Rozier. Oh boy, Terry Rozier has been terrible this year. He's not doing anything to help you, and I'd easily drop him for somebody like Peyton Watson or Max Christie. Over the last 2 weeks, he ranks 212th, and that is not what you want to see with Jimmy Butler currently in the midst of a suspension. Over the last 2 weeks, shooting 38% from the field, less than 1 3 per game at 0.7. Terry, what are you doing out there? 12 points per game, 4 boards, slightly under 3 assists, and not really any steals or blocks. And his season numbers are not much better than that. I mean, he's other than he's averaging 1.6 threes per game on the season. His season stats, season long stats, I should say, are pretty much identical to what he's been doing over the last 2 weeks. So, like, if he can't do anything without Jimmy, I'm not sure where this usage is supposed to come from. I do recognize that his best days in Charlotte were next to LaMelo, with LaMelo taking a lot of touches and Terry being kind of that second or third option, depending on how much Miles Bridges was getting on a nightly basis. But it's just puzzling to me why he's so terrible now. I realize that he's on a better team, but it's not just that he's getting less touches, even though he is. It's that he's not doing anything with those touches, and he's had a tendency to disappear this year during games. He makes almost no impact on the court if you watch the Miami play, and really is just not doing anything healthy. Like I said, he's averaging 31 minutes per game. It's not a minutes issue, and he's taking 12 shots per game right now over the last 2 weeks. It's not a usage issue either. He needs to hit his shots. He's not. He's been terrible. And yeah, if Miami trades Jimmy and like I don't know, the dynamic of the team shifts or something to where Terry's start getting a ton of open looks again. Maybe he's somebody you could pick up. I mean, he's definitely waiver wire material right now. He's 191st on this season, and it's strictly that name value that's holding him up. I personally have held him for the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks. Somebody dropped him. I grabbed him with the idea, oh, he's just slumping. But a slump, you're supposed to come out of the slump, right? It's not supposed to be a 2.5, 3 month long slump, because then you're just bad, right? So Terry, definitely a drop for me. I guess in Dynasty, you probably have to hold and hope he bounces back. The contract, that he's on ties him to Miami for the next season or two at the very least. So, there's some bounce back material here. But redraft leagues, not somebody I'm excited about this season, or just to finish out the season. It seems Miami is preferring Nikola Jovic and Jaime Jaquez right now. And those guys, I want to shout out his buys as well. Obviously, those guys are super trending up right now, right? But with the wake of Jimmy's suspension and eventual likely trade, I think it's very likely Jimmy doesn't play again for Miami. Those two are somebody I'd easily rather have over Terry moving forward. So, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on Bluesky, subscribe to the channel if you want to. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I mean, wherever you find your podcast, we'll be on. We just uploaded 2 podcasts. One yesterday and one a couple days before, just kind of in a mid-in-season review. So feel free to check those out if you like. I think there's some awesome discussion on there. And yeah, thanks to you guys so much for watching, and talk to you next time. Bye.